Good morning, everyone. Welcome to day 2 of Google I/O. Hopefully, you all are as excited as we are about the announcements from yesterday. Lots of cool stuff. This is going to be a ton of fun. I feel like sort of the theme, at least my takeaway, and I'm curious for you all as well, about yesterday was sort of, the agent era feels like it's really in full swing with Gemini. And so I've got lots of questions about the details of that story. And I'm joined by a bunch of wonderful, wonderful, wonderful guests. Josh leads the Gemini app team, AI Studio, and Google Labs. Koray is our CTO inside of DeepMind and Google's chief AI architect. Liz leads search, which is an incredible responsibility and privilege. And Jeff is our chief scientist and also one of the co-leads of Gemini. So this is going to be a fun conversation. Maybe we can sort of just start with Gemini 3.5, the agent era. Koray, what did it take to sort of like make that happen?
Okay, first of all, thank you very much. It's great being here with everyone. Wonderful environment. 3.5 Flash, like we started with the 3.5 series with Flash. The biggest thing that we really wanted to focus on was like getting coding and agentic workflows much better. We see a huge improvement from like where we were 6 months ago, September, when we released 3.0, when the model had really high levels of reasoning and multimodal understanding. And together with these agentic capabilities right now, I think like we have a system that is really enabling this like agentic era, as you said, for everyone, right? Like we are enabling that for developers, we are enabling that for businesses, through anti-gravity, through Gemini Spark. I think an exciting era is coming. A lot of focus went into really understanding like those workflows internally, us using the model very intensely, right? Like for coding and non-coding tasks as well. I think like to me that has been the main driver of understanding where the real bottlenecks are. And then getting that feedback into the researchers, into the model builders, to like extract that information and like find the solutions that's gonna make the model scale up. Because like there are hard technical challenges in terms of going long and solving long horizon tasks. But like I'm very happy and proud for the team.
Yeah, no, I love it. The team did a great job. I think one of the threads that Sundar talks about a lot is this like full stack AI approach that Google has. And I feel like an interesting like observation of that is that it feels like you actually need in a lot of ways this full stack AI approach to pull off agents like and actually make it work. And I think there's this like symbiosis between, we were talking earlier this morning about like the symbiosis between like the model, the harness, the product, and actually, Jeff, like maybe the hardware as well. And like, you need hardware in order to scale this up. And I'm curious, any sort of reactions to obviously the 8th generation TPU available and sort of powering a lot of these experiences in anti-gravity, maybe in the Gemini app, which is super exciting.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've now got pretty significant track record of doing many generations of TPUs, and we've been refining kind of the designs of those systems for, initially we were just focused on making them awesome for training and inference, and I think now we've got a bit of a separation of the designs so that we focus on both training, which is a somewhat different problem than inference, and have reasonable splits in the actual chip designs for those two different use cases. And I think it shows in the inference speed of these models, right? That starts from having really good hardware that can run very large scale models very quickly, and with great interconnects and all these kinds of things. But it also is the focus of a lot of people on the inference serving team and the software stack above that to make this all kind of come together. But we know when you use a model and it's super fast, it's a much more delightful experience than when you're using it and it's slow. And that's true even if it's agents using it on your behalf.
For sure. Yeah, and Liz, I think like maybe the search team feels this more than anyone, the sort of like, obsessive sort of like look at latency and sort of getting users the answer as fast as possible. I'm curious actually, like I feel like there's a lot of like balancing that search has to do. You want to get users an answer quick, but obviously, search has agents now and is sort of becoming an agentic product experience as well. And I'm curious sort of how you're thinking about finding that balance. And also like the headline of searches, like biggest upgrade to the search box in 25 years. I love that. It's super exciting.
Yeah, I think it's been a really close partnership with Koray's team on this. One of the things that's been interesting, we've always known that latency matters a lot to people, but it actually requires quite a deep understanding of how difficult does the user find the task, and like how much value are you providing, right? And so people's willingness to wait is in part based on how much work are you taking off. So I was talking with someone yesterday who was like, well, how much time can you spend? It's like, well, it depends on what you're asking, right? If the question in the user's mind is quick, then you better be lightning fast, right? Otherwise, they're like, why the heck am I waiting? On the other hand, if the user would have spent 15, 20 minutes doing it, you can have 10 seconds for sure, right? If you can do something amazing. And so we actually have been continuing to evolve over time. What is the amount of time required? And then you take something like we talked about bringing agentic coding in. If you're going to create a weekend planner for me, I'm going to use for the next several weeks, I might be quite happy to wait a minute, even, right? Because I can go, I can set it up, I can go do something else, I can come back and I can use it. And so we really need to build that level of adaptation. With something like information agents, it's working behind the scenes. So you can think about latency in a totally different way. It's important that when the change happens, you're really quick to respond to the user. And so it's constantly going to this question about what is valuable to the user. And as the models get better, that's great because it used to take a long task and now you can do it with a smaller model. That's really exciting to see. And then at the same time, you come with harder tasks to give the larger size model constantly.
Yeah, I feel like there's so much alpha in trying to find this like right balance of like how long should you actually take to do a task. And Josh, I asked you right before we got on stage. Yesterday, the Gemini app launched sort of to trusted testers and hopefully for Ultra subscribers next week.
Next week.
Next week. Gemini Spark, which is sort of the always-on 24/7 agent. I was asking you sort of like, what are the tasks that you have Spark sort of kicking off for you? And I think it's a good, like, I think we're all going to be trying to answer this question of like, what would I be willing to sort of let the agent go do on my behalf for some extended period of time? What are the things that I'm like, actually, I kind of need the answer right now. And I'm curious for Spark, how you're thinking about this for the Gemini app in general, but also like any insight for Spark specifically.
Yeah, well, it's fun. As we've been testing Spark, it's one of the things we've been finding. Each day you use it, you find more things it can possibly go do for you. And that's what's really exciting. When I first started using it, this was a way back, I was doing kind of regular scheduled things. So every morning it might go through a bunch of stuff for me. Then I started doing a bunch of things where I would set up triggers. So for example, like if I got an important email from Sundar, label it P0 and do a bunch of research about his question and like prepare the draft.
Then don't send the email.
Don't send the email. Yeah, exactly.
Very important. Don't send the email.
And it respects that, which is good. Then I've gone through a phase where there's a lot of kind of information-related things. For example, I'm a huge Oklahoma City Thunder basketball fan. And I have it where I get just like a daily, this is a nice surprise actually. I'm getting updates anytime the team has an update. But it's talking to me in a way like a diehard OKC Thunder basketball fan would talk to me. And so it's almost like you're like at the pub or something chatting about your basketball team. There's all kinds of other things we're doing on the team, and I know we've talked about this one too, where it'll go out and create documents for you or slide decks. That was some of the stuff I showed on stage yesterday. That's being really helpful too. You can go in, usually what I'm finding is the first draft is quite good, and then it gets me started, and I can go edit it and sort of do kind of revisions as needed. So it's quite fun to see. I can't wait for all of you to try it. And yeah, we're going to try to scale it as quick as we can next week, so stay tuned.
Yeah, I love it. I feel like it's one of the challenges of like these new capabilities landing is actually like deploying them across the product surfaces. And Koray, I'm curious, sort of like the tension you feel like we build a great model, and I think historically it was like not easy, but it was like a little bit easier because there's a few products that were using it, and I think now like the success cases, we take our models, we build them, they're built for all of Google's products and sort of the external ecosystem to build on top of, and it's like a much, there's thousands of people now who are involved in like taking the model and delivering it across Google, and I'm curious, there's also thousands of people saying, I wish the model would do this thing, and from a model perspective, Koray, I'm curious like how you're finding the balance of like where are we going in the world where like everyone wants Gemini to be everything? How to find that balance?
I also have my own wish list of, which seems like it's always the least priority one when I talk to the team for some
You got to
reason.
talk to the team. Talk to Tulsi. I'm sure she's here.
I think I think it is like from my point of view, I think it is important that we actually get all this feedback. Like yes, like is it a challenge because like with where we are when we release a model, like when you look at what is happening right now, we release Gemini 3.5 Flash, Gemini app, Spark, Search, and anti-gravity, and API. So like this is reaching pretty much everyone in the world on day one, immediately. So yes, of course, like you end up making some decisions in terms of making sure that there are minimums that you want to satisfy all across the surface. But it is important that at the end of the day, this is always a journey for building intelligence. And the steps that we take there is what everyone is asking for in intelligence, whatever surface it is, right? So there is that common factor that either it's Gemini app or Spark or Search, but every one of us want, and what every user, developer, or businesses want is more intelligence.
Yeah.
And that is common. And that's the main driver for everything that we do, right? Like that's always the highest priority. And that intelligence comes in like different forms. Of course, like reasoning capabilities is important, understanding the world is important, agentic actions is important. So like our first priority is get the fundamentals right, and then like together with that, make sure that the model is customizable. The model is like interacting with the user in the right ways. I think like that kind of strategy where we look at the model as a product itself, I think that is really important, so that we work with all the internal and external products and interfaces to develop the model. But that's the reality. We are sort of in that in between of not academic research anymore. It is not a real product that like there is no innovation. There is not a stale product. It is in that really exciting space of it is a technology that is going out in the world, and you need to find that balance where you both push the technology forward and make it useful at the same time.
Yeah, I feel like one of the points of tension that people always say is like, and actually something that makes these types of events like I/O really difficult to sort of have empathy for the model teams is to echo your point. I think like building the model today is like not sort of traditional like software development, building a product development. Like it really is research, and like sometimes it's research. You should be taking bets on things that maybe aren't going to work, and we don't know how it's going to play out. And it makes delivering a model on a specific day to the entire world an exceptionally difficult problem. And I think we pulled it off, which was awesome to see. And actually, we pulled it off, Liz. Like something that I was like surprised and super excited to see was like 3.5 Flash actually available to everyone inside of Search, which I think is, I don't know if that's the first time that we've delivered like our frontier model to everyone, but I'm curious like also what the increase in intelligence is enabling for Search, that like you actually like, you know, it's changing the way that people think about like I think the tagline, which I love, is like Google Search is AI search, which is awesome.
I think we're seeing with 3.5 that the reasoning and instruction following really helps. Like you think of search, you can think of it as one thing, but behind it, there's often a lot of different tools, for instance, right? We're asking the sports backend, we're asking the finance data, we're asking local, we're asking travel. And so you want to pull all of that together into an experience. And so as the model gets better at reasoning, it understands how to think about those better, how to pull the information together and make trade-offs better. I think one of the things that's been really great about being able to make progress in search is collaborating back and forth with DeepMind, where we would go and say, okay, well, here's the problem we're facing, but rather than, could you please make this specific thing work for search, it becomes a brainstorming back and forth between the teams about what is the underlying thing. Okay, what are we learning about what's challenging about tool use broadly? Okay, how can we partner to go make that right? What are the right types of valves that push the limits? And so that we try and find a way that you expand the model in a general way for everyone, but understanding Search's needs or Gemini apps needs, where we're sort of finding the opportunities or the challenges with the model and pushing it forward.
I think that is really the key. That I think we ended up establishing that relationship both with app and search. That we tried to go into the roots. I think Liz put it really well. That you can't fix individual problems. You always need to go to the root cause and try to solve those.
Yeah, I love that. One of the interesting threads, Jeff, you and I were having this conversation probably like 3 or 4 weeks ago, sort of as the model progress continues, where the new bottlenecks arise. And I think you had an interesting perspective on this that I think is like something that folks should be thinking about sort of as they build with the tools, as they use the tools. So I'm curious for your thoughts on that.
So, I mean, I think one way of viewing agent-based work is the agents are going to be built on powerful models that hopefully are, running on super fast hardware and themselves are sort of lightweight enough to be sort of fairly fast and capable. But if you start to think about maybe new techniques and new hardware that make the time in the model actually shrink dramatically, then all the tools that these models are trying to use, many of them are built for sort of human level interactivity, right? Like, list the files in the directory, go get this file and open it up and do stuff. And if you make the model infinitely fast, Amdahl's law says if you're spending half your time in tools, you're not going to get anything better than 2x speed up in that, even if you had magical hardware that doesn't exist.
Which I hope we get. I would love magical hardware. Jeff,
so I think we're going to have to,
hard.
as we start to use agents for more and more things and build out a broader set of suite of tools that these agents rely on, those tools themselves are going to need a lot of attention in terms of like how do we make those as fast and robust as we can? How do we have like maybe approximations to what the tool would really want to do, but maybe it can do a lighter weight form of whatever it's trying to do that is much, 10 times faster? Because I think that's going to be really important for building, if you start to have long-running tasks that, write this code and it's going to take a week, you'd really rather have that code take, half a day to do.
There's a really nice cycle here, right? We have we are in a really nice position of inside Google. It's so automated, the whole engineering environment, thanks to Jeff and others, of course, creating this environment. But many things are designed and built for human frequency and human cadence. So it's an initial amazing step to be able to have this. But now we are getting into this exciting stage that we can actually now use our own models to actually go through the stack and adapt them to this new agentic world. And then tools get faster, and then the models work better. And then that is another cycle that I'm excited about.
Yeah, I can give you a good example, actually. We had a bunch of internal tools that the models were trying to use.
Yeah.
And many of them were written in Python because that was easy and a good way to do it. But Python is not the speediest of programming languages. And so even the startup time of the tools was actually quite slow. But the models are now capable enough, when you're asking a model to write code with a natural language prompt, that's ill-specified in many ways because the model has to fill in a lot of details. But if you ask the model, here's a Python program that does something with a whole bunch of tests that test its functionality, please translate that entire system into Go. That's a much more fully specified problem because now you have actually a fully functioning spec in Python, and you just want it to be in another language. And we've been able to, people have been able to rewrite many of our internal tools to be 10, 20 times faster with, just one night of work with a capable model.
Yeah.
And I think one other interesting thing about this is there's the part of how do the tools get faster and making the tools kind of run at machine speed, maybe not human speed. The other side of it, we found building new products in Google Labs is around the context. How do you kind of prepare the context in a way that's not just human readable, but machine readable? So we have entire teams now that haven't written PRDs in months because that's sort of the old way of doing it. You're sort of writing in a way, whether it's an MD file or other things, where basically one of the models can just pick it up and go with it.
Yeah.
And even we showed yesterday on stage, Stitch is another example, one of our labs experiments. They've kind of introduced this whole idea of a design.md file, which is now open source, where you can just codify, here's the design language for our app. and the model can just take it and run with it and sort of obey it. And so I think it's both the tool velocity as well as the context, making both of those human and machine readable is really, really interesting.
Yeah. Were you going to add something, Koray?
I mean, I think like all this transformation, I think is going to really transform like the way we do software engineering is changing.
Yeah.
And like we see this inside Google. I see this as an opportunity for us to also understand what are the next frontier of developments we need to do in the model. This is why I'm always excited about working with products, external, internal as well. But like that experience, that first party experience that like model builders, researchers need to have, I think is irreplaceable. That is always the main driver. So like I expect a lot of folks here as well are going through similar kinds of things. Like wipe coding is important. Like I mean we test the models that way. But in a way, like, a big part of the transformation that we see today that is going to happen is transforming like our infrastructure that is very much designed like with the constraints that we had until now, and with this new agentic world, we can actually transform all of our software infrastructure in a much faster way to adapt to the new world. And I think that is going to be one of the biggest drivers of agentic coding.
Yeah. Speaking of agentic coding, Koray, you mentioned yesterday in a conversation that we were having that actually you personally reviewed all of the DeepMind code before Google.
In the early days,
you were personally the one reviewing every single pull request and change that.
And at some point, I realized that doesn't make sense. But I did that for a while. Yes.
Yeah. I'm curious, like through that lens, and like obviously thinking like your job is very different today, and actually all of your jobs have like changed in different ways over time. I'm curious, like, for you all personally, how sort of this advent of AI tooling and like the way that we all work has like shifted what you do, how you spend your time, if it has at all, or if you're still sort of operating in the same way. And I don't know if anyone wants to go first or feels strongly about this, but it feels like the renaissance is happening. And for myself, like I was doing a lot less coding before I joined Google. I was doing a lot of coding before I joined Google. I stopped doing coding for a little bit, and then actually this whole AI coding revolution has like brought me back to writing software every day, which has been really cool.
I feel the same. I used to write a lot of code, and then like my career took me in a path where like it slowly degraded and like not much. And then nowadays I feel like when I see something and I'm like, okay, I mean, this could be done in a different way, or I have an idea, I want to try. It is easy for me to do it because just like I'm having all sorts of conversation on like different things that we are doing day to day, I just have conversations with agents about, okay, I'm trying to change this part. Can you start looking at it? And I don't need to, I can do it very asynchronously, right? Like that is what is enabling me, because like even if my time is split between many things, like at night I can come back to it and say, okay, like what did the agents do? And like, see, I like the result. And I love that. Like, I mean, that gives me a more productive feeling, to be honest with you.
Who's reviewing the code though? Is it Jeff? Like, now that's the real question. But sorry.
I think one of the things that's interesting is just to watch the blurring across jobs.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of cases where people have some familiarity, but the startup cost is so high. Like, okay, I want to understand this data question. I don't know where the tool is located previously, so then I would go bug the data scientist, who should really be doing a more advanced task, to please find this information for me, right? Okay, but why do I need to do that? It's just because I don't actually know where the data is located, what's actually the case with. Okay, well now I can just go work with the agent, and it can do that, and now I can do this. Okay, can I lean in on the product? Can I change code, right? I hadn't written code for several years, now I can write code again. Because a lot of the startup costs, or a lot of the sort of knowledge about where something was, or how that was difficult to be good at everything, especially like in a code base as big as Google or search, but you had the ideas, okay? And I think you see this like at my level, but you see it at the levels below. Instead of a PM trying to then go talk with the UX designer that doesn't quite look right, and then trying to figure out how they explain this to the engineer who then tries to code it, can the PM change the skill or the design file, see it, realize their idea was not what they wanted, try again, and when they finally get something good, then they can go work with the engineer to make sure it's performant enough or other things like that. And so I think it's amazing because it empowers people to take the parts of their job that might have been a small percent, but that they had to rely on somebody else to do, and unlock it. And so that more people can feel like they're builders again, and not just coders or not just designers or not ones, but they actually get to sort of partner with other people to build something whole.
I mean, one thing I would say is it really accelerates the ability to do software development and experimentation, and particularly in parts of the code base where you're not necessarily as familiar because you didn't write large parts of it. So sometimes I'll dive into some performance issue and start to look at, why is this, this particular thing taking a lot of CPU cycles across the fleet or whatever. And sometimes it's in parts of the code base that I'm not that familiar with, but you can actually look at what the performance problem is and express at a very high level, it'd be different if we used this particular kind of locking scheme instead of this one, or this particular kind of data structure instead of this other one. That would probably improve it a lot, but it's actually quite a lot of work for you to manually go do that change. But now you could just rattle off these ideas, ask the agent to measure the performance impact, run all the tests, and you can be much, much more productive. And as Koray said, you can do it asynchronously as well, which is quite nice.
Yeah, I'm finding that's one of the big changes. I do a lot more asynchronously now, and I really try to guard and protect the time when I do something kind of synchronously. So then that time has gotten more valuable, I would say, just in my calendar. I also do a lot more on my phone. I also do a lot more with my voice. And so those are other areas I would say, just like things that we never, maybe a project didn't feel possible before, but now it's like you can even just do that project just on your phone. So I think those are things that are kind of changes in my day-to-day.
And maybe just a little plug, like Spark is really designed for this kind of asynchronous interaction. Like as opposed to when you go to the Gemini chat or search, you expect to like have this conversation ongoing, but Spark is really for these kinds of asynchronous interactions where the agent is gonna go and do something for you, and then you can come back and check, or it will notify you that I'm done, or things like that. I think that is a big enabler, really.
Yeah, this is a perfect tee up for my question about sort of like the future of interfaces, and sort of as the models change, as the capabilities change. We launched Gemini Omni yesterday, and sort of the ability to take in any input and produce any output, which is really exciting. We launched a bunch of new audio interfaces across the suite of Google products. Josh, I think the labs team is sort of like often at the helm of trying to figure out like, what do we do with these new capabilities? What do we do? Like, what does the next interface look like that's like voice native and sort of solves all these problems? So I'm curious if y'all are cooking anything that you can share, or just general comment.
Well, we are cooking a lot. We'll see if it's any good in a little bit. I mean, that's part of what we're trying to do, though, is figure out if you take something, say like voice-only interface, and you dial that all the way to 11, what do you get on the other side of that? Like what kind of product, what kind of experience? Because at this point, I feel like the models with voice, and we tried to show some of that yesterday, whether it was what Sundar showed with Docs Live, where you're just creating the document, or some of the stuff I tried to show with Spark, or even some of the stuff you'll see throughout the festival here on site. I think that's one area where we will try to go explore. I do feel like, just building maybe a little bit on Koray said, so much of how we've used computers for the history of time has been synchronous in a lot of ways. And maybe it didn't always, like you type and you get an answer in milliseconds. You may have to go make a coffee or something for some of the large systems and other things when they first started. But I think this idea that you'll be able to just toss things over your shoulder changes how we're going to have to think about the design. So our first design of Spark is a little bit more of a dashboard view. I don't know if that'll be the ultimate design. I'd be surprised if it was the ultimate design, to be honest with you. So I think there is going to be some notion, people talk about it, is it like a dashboard or a command center, or like where are you orchestrating these things?
Mission control.
Is it mission control?
It's going to look like the NASA ISS
that
mission
seems hard
control.
to read, though.
You got 1,000 monitors and 20 people.
That's right. I do think, though, there is like sort of maybe an arc towards interfaces that do feel more and more natural, though. And I think that's probably also why I'm very excited about voice, is because we know that just around the world, that's how we've all grown up learning how to talk to people. And so I feel like that maybe there's some unlock here where voice plus some notion of kind of a status that gives you a sense of where things are, where they need your help, feels like there could be something there, but we're going to try to experiment a lot. We'll see where it goes.
Yeah, I feel like the dashboard view is kind of a good one that'll scale to a limited level, but it might be good for 10 things, but it's probably not going to be good for 100 things you're trying to do. So then do you introduce some sort of hierarchy of these tasks are all related, or maybe you have like stand-ups among your agents or something every day. Who knows? I think that question is, if every person has 30 virtual interns working with them, how do you coordinate that?
Or maybe we'll just do what Liz does, like search and let the agent design the interface.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, I do think there's this interesting question about whether the interface is the same for everybody.
Yeah.
Right? And actually, is the way that you think about processing the task different than the way I might think about processing or Jeff might? And so should you actually, if you truly have an agent, can the agent organize the people the way you want, not the way somebody else wants? I mean, so how does that affect it?
Definitely should be different, I think, right? Like, I mean, if in education settings, people learn in different ways. And so, a podcast describing something versus an interactive tool that people can play with versus a textbook chapter are all different ways of learning things, and they're differently appropriate for different people.
Yeah. One of the things that I would love y'all's reaction to, just because we're all so close to the action, and so I think it's interesting to see your perspectives about like anything that surprised you that we sort of launched at I/O or in the last couple of weeks or months. And I'll give my really quick one, which is something about Omni, and the part that surprised me. Actually, we were talking this morning, like. I sort of like academically got it. I was like, oh, the model's powerful. It's Nano Banana for video. And then we sort of had that podcast intro clip of what we were doing. And sort of the example was like a bunch of people talking in a podcast. And then like, I'm holding a cat and a plant, and there's like, things flying all over. And I was just like, it made sense. And it clicked for me. I was like, I get it. It's like, it was surprising what I was surprised by is like that use case was what sort of like clicked for me, and that maybe is the application of like taking videos and sort of doing interesting things too without actually like changing the core content, maybe to like make it more engaging. Jeff, to your point, for like educational context, or add some like supplemental stuff. So I'm curious for you all, anyone have any interesting things that they've been surprised by from a launch model capability perspective?
Well, I've got one maybe real quick. Google Flow was on stage yesterday. It's a tool we've done for filmmakers. And one of the things that was kind of snuck in there, and everything flies by so fast in the I/O stage, but we've got a new area in the product where you can make tools. And to me, it could be, we'll see if it works, but one of the really more big jumps in how we think about product design, because we're essentially carving out an entire part of the app where we're saying, you as a filmmaker, as a creative using it, vibe code your own tool. And so it's taking advantage of all the 3.5 Flash advances in sort of reasoning, coding, and people, I think, are going to be able to make, actually, to this point, their own software right in the tool. And I think for us, it was a big shift the first time I saw it as we were headed into I/O, because now, as a product team, we're kind of building almost a thin shell with the space to let people that use the tool really make the tool their own. And I think that's very empowering, but also a whole different way to think about, I have to design every tool and every feature. It's actually, no, just put the tools on the table. And these are very creative people. They're going to go create the shaders and the text overlays and the lighting effects and everything they're going to want. And so I'm very excited to see how that, hopefully takes off today as people have started using it. Our Discord is kind of throbbing with cool, creative ideas. So that was one for me.
I love that.
For me, the operating system demo that Warren showed that we did in Anti-Gravity, it was surprising to me. We worked on this model for a while. We worked on these agentic capabilities, code capabilities for a while. But the capability of just saying, teamwork, go build an operating system, and then it just goes and hundreds of agents works for like day and a half, and they come back with something that is actually functional and working. I was still when I see that, I'm impressed. I'm surprised. I think I always in a way find myself in a position of take a step back. This is to be able to do this impressive. To be able to do this at scale is impressive. To be able to do this at the speed is impressive, and to be able to actually like give this to everyone who's using anti-gravity, and being able to do it at that scale, I'm excited.
I love it.
Yeah.
I think for me, we started looking at how do we bring some of the agentic coding capabilities into search, but initially we were working with the model. And then partway through we said, oh, well, maybe for some of these more advanced use cases, let's look at using anti-gravity. And then that worked so well, they're like, well, actually, maybe we should use it for more things. Maybe we should use it for more. And sort of, I don't think if we had told people 4 months ago, we're going to take anti-gravity and we're going to put it in the heart of search, they would have said, like, what are you guys
like, Liz
talking
is going
about?
crazy.
Like, search
What is going
and
on?
developer, like, these things do not go. But you sort of do it and you see how it unlocks the power to sort of create these experiences that are very information at the heart, but transform them in a very personal and customizable way. And so I think we've only realized more and more how we can bring it in, and that's been pretty exciting to see.
Just to open a little parenthesis there, like when we say anti-gravity, we mean multiple things. So anti-gravity, like there's the user interface that we give to the developers, but there's the harness.
Yeah.
There's the SDK that we gave that in SDK as well. So the same capability that like search is using, building on top of that SDK to build those agents into search, we are enabling all the developers and businesses to use that exact same SDK that is really co-developed with Gemini to build applications for anyone who wants to use them.
Love it.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I can tie together a few of these themes because I think collectively they are a really exciting sort of vision. So in the past, software has been kind of something that is created that has to be kind of standardized and then used in lots of settings where maybe it's not the perfect fit for this particular setting or the perfect fit for that setting, but because the creation cost was very high, you sort of settled on this kind of does the job and it's good. But I think now you're seeing with long-running agents that can go off and create bespoke software, you can actually get very customizable systems that do much more closer to what you actually want in any sort of environment, be it your own personal setting, be it in the middle of search, you get some nice visualizations that are created by the system, be it in tool creators for media generation. I think that's kind of a really cool aspect of what these long-running tasks will enable is you can just say, I would like this thing to exist. It will go off and hopefully autonomously make that thing come into existence, and then you can use it.
I love that. We have 2 minutes, so we're going to do a lightning round of fast questions. Jeff, and I think you're uniquely qualified to answer this, the most important developer skill in 2026?
Learn how to use coding tools and agents to be much more productive and build awesome things.
I love that. Liz, something you hope that search can take off people's plate sort of in the next few months, year, that sort of it doesn't do today?
I think for each person it's probably a little bit different, but it's sort of what is the part of sort of research and searching and gathering information that feels drudgery to you? Can you feel like you can just get rid of that, give it off, and then you can spend your time exploring and learning about the things you want to learn about?
I love that. Josh, something surprising that Gemini Spark has done for you in the last month or so?
Ooh. It's very good at looking at your calendar and suggesting meetings you can cancel. And it will even. What's amazing about it too is it'll tell you why, and can even suggest a reply if you want to send. So
One-on-ones with Logan, who cares? Cancel, not important. I love that. And Koray, maybe. When do you think we'll get a Gemini Ultra model? No, I'm just kidding. Obviously, huge amount of progress. What do you think? What do you think comes next?
What do I think comes next? I think from the developers, users perspective, a lot more agents, because I think now we are at the place where we are figuring out what is the right way that we can actually surface agents for people to use in many different places in their lives. This is all about giving user the control, making sure that we get it right. I think we are going to see a lot more of this happening. And I think from the technology perspective, again, I think we are going to see a lot more technology frontier being explored, not just solving today's problems, but also pushing the technology so that we are building intelligence, that like we are building something that is learning and thinking and like, understanding how to be creative, how to push the boundary. So like I think those two things will happen at the same time.
I'm excited. I/O 2027. We'll see. This was amazing. Thank you all for joining us this morning. Thanks for those who are tuning in on the live stream. We're going to take a short break, and then James Manika is actually going to be on the stage with our Google Quantum AI founder, Hartmut Neven. Hopefully I said that right, Hartmut. Join me in giving Josh, Koray, Liz, Jeff a round of applause.
Thank you.